So I'm calling everybody out there that's passing it off as Star Wars Goonies. It's not watching it. You are not real Star Wars fans. And that's the truth.
Welcome back to Nerd Legion. We are returning to our favorite franchise that has produced an epic amount of quality content over the last decade, Star Wars.
Yeah. Star Wars. You gotta love it. The wars and the stars and all the stars that come along with those wars. And we got some new stars on the horizon in Skeleton Crew. And you and I have had some rough times with Star Wars, both on this show and off this show. I don't know if we talked about this before, but you and I actually went to The Last Jedi together. And at one point, I think I just turned to you and just like silent screamed in rage. It was probably around when Poe was like saving Finn. It was like, we have to protect the people we love. And I was just ready to, find a balcony and throw myself over it.
That was one of my favorite movie experiences ever, because obviously I knew that the first movie in the sequel trilogy was super terrible, so I thought this one was going to be super terrible. So I just sat next to you and I was just watching you the entire movie. Like
So
every time something stupid would happen, I would just turn around and look at those reactions like, how's your Star Wars today?
Dude, like, I didn't have a lot of hopes for the sequels, and I thought the first movie was like, okay, all right, we rehashed A New Hope. We're getting people reintroduced to the universe. The new characters are okay. I like Kylo. I like Finn. Where are we gonna go from here? And the answer was just off a cliff story wise. It was so bad. The Casino Planet man, like, you okay? And she like releases the horse alien thing. She's like, now I am, and I don't condone attacking actors for the roles that they are playing. She was just doing what she was directed, saying the lines in the script. Like, you should not attack the actors, but man, that was some awful, awful writing. And yeah, it was a terrible experience.
I support attacking the bad actors in that movie.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they were bad. I think they did their job. And you can only do so much with.
Yeah, and if you go to work and you do a job that's that bad, you get fired.
Well, the difference is that it's more like if you go to your factory job and they just give you the wrong instructions for operating the machinery and it just bursts into flame, like you're just doing what they told you, they instructed you to do, right? That's not your fault,
Two things can be true. They can be bad at their jobs and also be given bad instructions. So we got that going for us. All right, DoA, you ready for my hot take that will resonate across the Trump resurrected zombie TikTok?
Wow. Okay, this is exciting. Go.
My hot take is that Skeleton Crew is the second best Star Wars film or TV show released since the original trilogy.
I agree. I think I agree. Yeah. I mean, I like Rogue One, which I know you don't agree with, but I did like Skeleton Crew better than Rogue One by a pretty large margin, I think, actually. So yeah, it would go Andor first and then Skeleton Crew second, which is, I think, what your rating would be too. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, better than the prequels, certainly better than the sequels, better than all the other Star Wars TV content aside from Andor. Yeah, it was great, but for very different reasons, which is why it's going to be fun to talk about.
Yeah, and I think what's disappointing, DoA, is that the ratings around Skeleton Crew have been not good, which is very, I think, bad news for the Star Wars franchise as a whole. It was actually in its premiere week 20% lower than the worst performing Star Wars TV show to this point, which was The Acolyte. It was The Acolyte. So it was 20% below The Acolyte. And obviously, I think a lot of people hate watch The Acolyte. I mean, our episode on The Acolyte did very well because The Acolyte was bad. And people knew it was bad, and they were trying to get in there and just see how bad it was and laugh at it.
Right.
But I think the problem with Star Wars as a franchise is this, DoA. Here's my theory.
Mhm.
So there basically are not casual Star Wars fans anymore, because the Star Wars property has been so badly handled, and all of the, not all, except for Andor and this show, everything else, basically, especially the stuff that's been released in the last 5 years, has been really, really bad. And so I think people who are not the hardcore fans are just kind of turned off Star Wars in general, so it's difficult to get them hyped up for the new show.
Mhm.
And the people who are hardcore Star Wars fans, if you do not give them something recognizable, if you don't nostalgia bait them with Darth Vader or Anakin like they did in Ahsoka, like I think Ahsoka got good viewership because there were a bunch of Zoomers who like the cartoons with Ahsoka in them and who grew up on the prequels, and they have this nostalgia that they are baited in by the Anakin Darth Vader storyline. And I think in the absence of those two things, which is a stream of quality content, quality Star Wars content that people are compelled to watch, even if they're not ultra fans of the franchise, and then the lack of recognizable characters for the super fans, I think we end up with bad viewership on what are good shows. Because remember, Andor didn't smash viewership records. The thing about Andor's viewership was it was more of a slow burn, where it started out low, and then over time, I think it had a longer tail on it, because I didn't watch it until probably 6 months after release, because fuck Star Wars, frankly.
Sure.
It's terrible. And so I had no hope that that show would be good. And even the people who are telling me it was good, I'm like, you're nostalgia baited by Star Wars. Yes,
That was me.
but it is actually good. And I think
great.
that's the tough part, is that even me, somebody who grew up as a big Star Wars fan, it took a long time to convince me to watch Andor, and I'm glad I did it. And maybe Skeleton Crew will be the same thing. Maybe the good reviews that are going around are going to convince people to watch it over time, but it hasn't been the same level of success as even some of the bad Star Wars show, because at least that's catering to nostalgia bait from the fans. So that's my current theory of Star Wars, is that basically they pumped out so much trash that the normal people, the normies, don't give a fuck and aren't going to watch it. And the hardcore fans, if you do not give them Darth Vader showing up, aren't going to watch it. So here we are with a show that is good and has a lot of merits, but has the worst viewership ever of any Star Wars TV show, including The Acolyte, which is, I mean, The Acolyte's like a 1 out of 10, and this show is maybe like an 8 out of 10.
I mean,
so the quality difference is enormous.
Wars, just some of the worst television that's ever been made. But I digress. That's all I got to say about The Acolyte tonight. My once per episode, you know. But I think I agree with a lot of what you said. I think there's additional factors with Skeleton Crew that should be considered, and I think it is important to look at. If you look at the reviews, it's a very well reviewed show. Like, the ratings might be bad, as in like not many people are watching it. But the reviews that are coming in, both from critics and from just fans, are really good. They're very high, generally, from those parts. So the people who are watching it are liking it a lot. But I think this show had what you said going against it too. But I also think it's the whole thing about people being like, it's Space Goonies. And like, when people started saying that, I'm like, you think you're being kind of clever, but you really don't even know what you're saying. Like, it's sure, it's Goonies in that there's kids and a bit of a pirate theme, sure, but outside of that, plot wise, very, very different. The kids are they're not searching for treasure, they're trying to get home, right? So
it's more Space Treasure Island. It's more Space Treasure Island than Space Goonies.
So when I hear people say Space Goonies, I'm like, you don't know what the Goonies is, and you also haven't watched this show. You just kind of sound dumb when you're saying it's Space Goonies.
Look, I think there are strong parallels with the Goonies. It's just a mashup. It's a pastiche of many different things.
When people are saying Space Goonies, what they're really saying is it's got that good adventure kids vibe that
Yeah,
the
which is great.
80s films had, right? Which is not just the Goonies, but they say Goonies because there's a pirate connection and because that's one of the most well-known, kids adventure films, right? But what the show really captures more than anything is that vibe, right? The vibe that these are kids that are going on an adventure. They're growing through this adventure. They become more capable over time. We're rooting for them. It's a group that every kid is different and unique, but they all bring something important to the team. And so it's like that construction of a story is what people are kind of missing, right? And that existed in the Goonies as well as many, many other shows in the 80s and the early 90s. I mean, you look at Hook, sure, is similar to that,
The
or even
Sandlot.
like Flight of the Navigator, which wasn't really
Mm.
a group of kids, but it was another kids kind of adventure thing. And so, Willow even, right? Which was,
Sure.
again, not really kids, but still that same kids adventure kind of vibe.
Yeah.
So people are saying it's got that vibe, but I think other people take that as an indication that they've seen it all before and so they don't need to watch. So I think that comparison has hurt this show too, where people just pass it off without giving it a chance. Because again, the people that watch it really, really like it. There was this one reviewer who I won't name out of consideration, I suppose. I don't know. Also, I can't find his name right now when I research for it. But I was reading his reviews of episode by episode, and he started out, I think his name was like Mark Redmond or something like that. But he started out very negative on the show. No, it's just Space Goonies, Space Goonies. Oh, what a waste of funds and time, blah, blah, blah. And then over the episodes was start to be like, wait, do I actually like this now? And then towards the end of the series was like, this is great. And so it wasn't that the quality of the individual episodes changed. I think this person, although they didn't write it, came to a realization that their early sort of like preconceived notions about the show were wrong, and they were kind of finally letting themselves watch the show for the show as it was, and then enjoyed it because it's a great show. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that, like Andor, maybe even more so than Andor, is going to have longer lasting viewership and a growing following fan base with this, because this is the kind of group where it's like, I want to see more. I want to see a season 2. I want to see more adventures, with these kids and with with Jude Law's character, and it's really, this was such a great self-contained story, but it's also something you could really expand on. Like, these kids have much more cinematic draw than Ray does, right? If you're Lucasfilm, if you're worried about drawing people to cinema, do a Skeleton Crew film or something like that. Just get it made by the same people, and I think you'll have something good there. Because I think there's a lot of good characters that were introduced in this. That's my take on it. With why it's doing poorly viewership wise. I think it's what you said, but I think it's also that those preconceived notions that are incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a lot of good points there, and like I said, I hope that over time, people will give this show a shot, because look, Andor was very successful. People did not expect a well-crafted political intrigue drama, like espionage thriller, with very intriguing themes about the nature of tyranny, the nature of freedom fighters. Like, these are all really interesting concepts that Andor brings up, and it feels like an adult prestige TV show, which is not what Skeleton Crew is. Skeleton Crew is a fun kids show, and I think it shows what you can do in the Star Wars universe, kind of at both extremes. But both shows really work well.
This is what infuriates me. Right? You stupid Star Wars fans. All right, and as a lifelong hardcore Star Wars fan, it seems like, I hate to say it, most Star Wars fans are now idiots, I guess, because they've been just nostalgia baited to death, where the only good Star Wars to them is Skywalker centric or Force or lightsaber centric, and like, no, Andor and Skeleton Crew is what we want in Star Wars. You are playing with the universe. You are telling new stories in the universe that we love. This is what you wanted. So when you're not watching it, when you're not even giving it a chance, then I don't know what to tell you. I feel like you're not real Star Wars fans, frankly. I think you say you are, but you don't really love the universe, because if you did, you would want to see stuff like this and you'd be celebrating it and championing it. So I'm calling everybody out there that's passing it off as Star Wars Goonies. It's not watching it. You are not real Star Wars fans. And that's the truth.
And what I loved about this show is that there are no characters there are no places There are no Jedi. The Jedi are a myth. It's something that Wim especially aspires to and wants to see, but does one ever show up? No. And they should be mysterious and rare. That's what Jedi should be before they ruined it with the prequel trilogies. I liked it when it was like, ooh, I've just heard about these Jedis in the original trilogy, right? And they're so uncommon and they have all these powers. And, I enjoyed that mystique. And it's back, which I really appreciated. So, I love that it takes place in the Star Wars universe, but it has none of the nostalgia, like none of it. The nostalgia instead comes from the comparisons to, plots that you already know, like the Goonies or like Treasure Island. It's not complex and it's not particularly original in that it mashes up a bunch of other stories that we've already seen, but it really does it very well. And that's the key aspect.
It does a great job of producing a very engaging story where we really want to know what happens next. We really want to see what happens to the characters. We're interested in all of the characters, both the heroes and the villains, and I really love that it fits so nicely in with the other Star Wars stuff that exists, in that, you say there's nothing at all to do with any of the other Star Wars stuff. And that's true for the most part. There's a couple little things, but the way they use things from the Star Wars universe fits in just so perfectly with telling this independent story, but also having it be something that's totally believable as something that's happening parallel to other events in Star Wars, right? Because this takes place, I think it's like, what about, something about like 5 or 6 years after Return of the Jedi it's supposed to take place in. So it's kind of like around the same time where, like, I believe like The Mandalorian is happening at around the same time this is happening. Timeline wise, I'll have to go back and double check, but that was my perception of it. But the way they do it, I mean, yeah, you could totally believe that this planet existed out there that was kind of intentionally forgotten about, right? And then after the Republic fell, it kind of just got lost, right? And so the people that are on this planet don't know anything about it. So when the kids say something about like, oh, we learned about Coruscant and Alderaan in school, and Jod is just like, oh, wow, you're a little bit out of it. That stuff is funny to us, right? Because we know what happened to Alderaan, and they don't, because they've been so isolated, right?
Tell me, what makes your planet special in all the galaxy?
Nothing. It's totally boring.
Any nearby planets?
In school we learned about Coruscant and Alderaan.
Alderaan? Missed the war, did you?
What war?
Or that, they don't know that the Jedi were wiped out, right? So they think there's still this big organization out there. So it's the way that it fits in with the existing Star Wars stuff. They did really, really well too. Which, again, this is what we want in the universe. We want brand new stories, but told in a way where we could realistically see this stuff happening parallel to something else or happening elsewhere in the universe. It's done so well. This is the Star Wars we want.
Yeah, and we already did an episode on this, guys, where we talked about the first few episodes, so we will now discuss how this show ended. Obviously, we still both liked it a lot. It really, I think, did nail the landing. It had a very nice arc to it. But we got to talk about one of our sponsors first, and that, of course, is going to be Turtle Beach, and particularly these headphones, which are the Stealth 700 Gen 3s. This is their newest product. Audio quality is just fantastic on these. I mean, you guys probably know Turtle Beach has for many years been a leader in audio and gaming. You guys can look up reviews from audiophiles and audio YouTube channels on these. You will see the reviews are absolutely outstanding. The reason why we're not wearing them right now, as I always say, is that we need hard lines. We need wired headsets in order to connect to our microphones so we can hear ourselves while we're creating content, which is very important. These are also Turtle Beach. They're the Atlas Airs, which are open back headphones if you want these instead. They are also wireless. They just have a wired option, so that's what I'm using right now.
Yeah, they haven't sent me any yet, so come on, Turtle Beach. I want to wear your headsets on the broadcast, so people are seeing this. Come on. So, but, when I'm not doing the broadcast, I do put these on for all my...
I wear these all the time when I'm... this is my preferred choice. They're closed back headphones. The Stealth 700 also has a lot of really helpful features on it, including multiple wireless transmitters. So it has 2 wireless transmitters, which means one can be plugged into your PC and the other could be plugged into your Switch or your Xbox or your PS5. And all you got to do to switch between them is push one button. So it means you're not like trying to take out the USB wireless stick and move it. It makes it super easy to transition from PC to console. They also have simultaneous connectivity with Bluetooth, which means you can listen to Nerd Legion on your phone via Bluetooth and play your PC or your console at the same time. And they have independent volume wheels on each of the ear cups, so you can turn up your Bluetooth, turn down your PS5, or vice versa. You can take Discord calls while you're playing with your friends. You can listen to music, listen to Spotify on your phone while you're playing on your console. It's just very, very handy. Super comfortable as well, super lightweight. 80 hours of battery life, which is absurd.
I still haven't charged mine since I charged them the first time I got them, like a month ago at this point. I use it every day. Still haven't had to recharge it.
Yep, they are great. So, of course, guys, you guys can head over to turtlebeach.com and use code NL, that's the letters NL for Nerd Legion, for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code NL. It's everything, not only their headsets like the Stealth 700 Gen 3. They have mice, they have keyboards, they have fight sticks, they have flight sim gear, they have racing sim gear. If you're into all of that, all their stuff is very well reviewed. You guys can check it out for yourself. So thank you very much to Turtle Beach. We appreciate their sponsorship of Nerd Legion. So let's talk about what happens in this show, DoA, because it really is, pretty manageable in terms of watch time. Each episode's about 20 minutes or 30 minutes long. It's only 8 episodes, and they do a really good job of resolving the primary plot arc. They do it with a lot of humor. The show is very funny.
Real humor too.
Like real humor. I mean, I thought it was great how part of this is, we have to go to, the pirate captain, the dead pirate captain's lair, but it's been turned into a resort planet. It's just really funny, frankly.
Yeah.
This is Coleridge Mountain? They ruined it!
That's the thing that surprised me with the show. I thought it'd be like fun adventure, but there's some like genuinely great comedy stuff in there too, like that, where you expect it to be like Indiana Jones style with booby traps and all that, but instead they have to navigate through a luxury hotel and stuff. And
it's very funny.
It's great. Yeah. I mean, and just seeing Jude Law's character navigate all this stuff too, it's extra funny because he remembers how it was and all that. And it's constantly like, is he an anti-hero? Is he really a villain? And it's all kind of in the middle towards the end. He's the best character in the show for sure, both in terms of how he's written and just well acted. But man, I mean, where to start? It's I only had one little negative thing about this show, and that's that I thought the 4th episode moved a little bit slowly, and that was it. Everything else in the show I really liked. I thought the effects were great, the cinematography was great, the music was great, the acting was great across the board. The kids were awesome, actually. And it's difficult to find not only one good child actor, it's really hard to find a group of child actors. And
I did think that
synergy and ability. Yeah,
I think the kid who played Wim was a little bit weak, but he also had the weakest writing of any of the characters because he's kind of the straight man, and I felt that they kind of returned. I felt like they kind of returned to the he loves the Jedi stuff a little too much instead of letting him grow. So, but I don't think the actor was terrible by any means. He didn't ruin the show, but I think that it's a testament to the other kid actors who are playing KB, Fern, and Neil that, he did look worse in comparison.
Maybe we can even... Sorry.
Always best to have a hostage.
I mean, I think it's part of the nature of that character too, to be the like unfailing, naive optimist, right? Which is a common trope in these kinds of movies and a common trope in Star Wars too, right? So I think he fit that mold well, and he was fun to watch, and he tries, right? He tries to kind of live up to his own expectations, but doesn't quite get there. Like when he tries to look threatening with the lightsaber and ends up turning it on upside down, which is just another great, because like you look at that scene towards the end and you're like, wait a second, is he holding that upside down? And then he does, he activates it, and then of course, it doesn't work out. He's not as threatening as he thought he was going to be.
Careful, Wim. It's not one of your stories.
But yeah, I thought I wasn't gonna like Neil as a character because he's just a little elephant kid. I can't remember the name of that species of alien anymore, but ended up just being a great character. That he's just kind of the character that never would ever want to be on an adventure like this, but he kind of came along because he's Wim's friend, and so he has to try to learn to be brave a little bit too. But he never really stops being a little bit of a cowardly introvert, but in a funny way, right? He does some heroic things, and so when he does have his big heroic moment, like manning the turbo laser at the end to shoot the pirate ship, that's you're cheering for him. You're like, oh, Neil, you're doing it. But then you've got other stuff, like as soon as they get home, the next time they cut to him, he's like in the bubble bath, just like trying to soak back in his, in the lap of luxury once again, So he's the character that's just like, I don't want to grow at all. I don't want to have anything to do with this adventure, but he's sort of forced into it. And he ended up being a really funny character too. I didn't mind the implementation of Star Wars Suburbia like I thought I would.
No, I thought it was good. Look, I was the one saying that I was the one dreading this show, Daw. I was the one who thought this looks like absolute shit. But it ended up being really good. So I changed my mind very quickly on this one. I also just want to, not that it needs doing, but shout outs to Jude Law, who is fantastic in this show. Yeah. He is, you can tell he's just enjoying every second of being on this show. He's chewing up the scenery. He's completely ridiculous. What a fun character for him to play, where just like Long John Silver in Treasure Island, you're never sure about his motivations. And, he's playing this long game where we don't even know if it's his real name by the end of the show still, which I thought was a nice touch, where they never actually reveal his identity. He just takes over the pirate crew as Captain Silvo again. His weaseling his way out of being put out of the airlock was very funny. He just does a fantastic job. He's a delight in this show.
You kill me and you're throwing away the greatest treasure the galaxy's ever known. Let me out!
For you lot, I'll be joining him.
No. Wait!
Well, it's, he's got these like merciless scenes too, where, Brutus, the Shistavan, the Wolfman thing is, the kids catch him with the claw thing, and you're like, oh, that's a good childlike way to deal with the villain. He just walks up and shoots him. And you're like, okay, he's got some real, kind of not villainous necessarily, because that character did want to kill him, But, very kind of cold and brutal things. But I loved that in the end, and we're getting into some pretty heavy spoilers here, so I would recommend watching it first if you don't want to get spoiled. But in the end, I like that we never really knew what side he was on or what his angle was and who he was, because he didn't really know. He went to such extreme lengths to not hurt the children and not kill people, not kill, innocent people essentially, because, deep down, he wanted to be that Jedi hero, right? We find out that he was this sort of like kid that was, poor and starving on this planet. And one of the, Jedi in hiding from the Order 66 purge took him on and had just started teaching him in the ways of the Force. So he had this figure that we find out as a child that he looked up to, and he felt like he was finally getting delivered out of this really rough life. And then that person was taken from him, right? Killed in front of him. And so despite being, I think, a good person at heart, it was just ingrained in him that that's just not the way the world is, and he has to fit himself to the way he perceives the world to be. So
he's also just a survivor. You do get the feeling that even though he is committing villainous actions at the end and trying to hold Aten the planet hostage, and he kind of sinks to a new low. The reason why he's doing that, sure, he's greedy. Sure, he wants the treasure. But he was put in a situation where he had to promise the pirates these things or they would have killed him. And, you get the sense that if he doesn't follow through on this promise, they're still going to kill him. They might kill him anyway. Who knows? He has lived in a very brutal, cutthroat world, and he is doing what it takes to stay alive, which gets him, I think, in over his head. And then we get to see the scenes where maybe he isn't really like that. And I think it does open up some really interesting possibilities for a sequel to this show where he can have that kind of Han Solo turn. This is the reason why I never watched the Solo movie, DoA, because I reject Greedo shooting first. And my whole concept of the Solo movie was that, Han Solo was such an unlikable guy. He's such an unlikable character at the start of A New Hope. And so they couldn't possibly make a prequel movie where he's a sympathetic character because he's literally he just shoots people in cold blood at a bar for a deal that's gone wrong. And so I had no interest in Solo because I knew they wouldn't make the movie where he is an anti-hero, basically.
Well, I think I don't think Solo was the greatest movie, but I think you'd be surprised because they don't really make him out to be the hero in that one either. It does kind of keep him true to the character he is at the start of A New Hope, which I know you don't believe me, but
I don't.
And like when I go back and I rewatched that one actually a couple of months ago because I had only seen it once in the theater and it was a slow day or something like that. And I remembered that it was directed by Ron Howard. And so I went back and watched it again and I'm like, this is just a good Ron Howard adventure movie, I'll say the thing I've said a million times. It never needed to be made. We didn't need a young Han Solo movie at all. I would have rather that was a different Star Wars thing like Skeleton Crew, right? Where it's something brand new. But for what it is, it was good. It definitely exceeded expectations. But I digress. I agree with what you're saying though, where Ja Na Nawood, if that's his real name, could have like a heroic arc into season 2, right? Because even at the very last shot we get of him, he's watching his pirate ship crash, and with it, all his hopes of getting away with this. He's stranded on the planet now. He's definitely not going to be rich. What's he going to do? And he looks just distraught at first, and then the look on his face changes to kind of look neutral, and then becomes almost a little bit of a wry grin at the end, where I think deep down, even though he was doing bad things and he's been pushed to do bad things, deep down he was glad that the good guys won. I think that gave him, even though he was kind of the victim of the good guys winning, I think it seemed like it indicated that restored a little bit of that character's hope of good in the universe, which had kind of been driven out of him. So that last little look we get at him kind of indicates that too. And I think that's just such a great ending for that character too, where you don't know for sure, but you're kind of like, maybe he learned something too along the way, which I think he did. I feel like I'm right in that assumption, but I just think that character is so well written from start to finish. And like I said, Jude Law absolutely crushes it. Give him every award you can possibly give someone.
He's great
for acting in a television series because he deserves it.
And I think the other big strength of this show is not its innovation, as we've discussed, in terms of its plot, but really just the execution and the fun little flourishes they put on it. Like having Aton be an Old Republic mint world that is hidden, by this force field. It's like they're inside a planetary bank vault. And, it's very important that this is done because we have to make these dataries and we have to provide currency for the Old Republic. But everybody who's here keeps it a secret, and we have to be closed off from the rest of the galaxy, and only these emissaries can get through in order to collect what they've created. It's just it's so fun. It's such a fun twist on the pirate buried treasure trope that you could only do in this sci-fi world, and it feels really cool that they went there.
Yeah, exactly. And I know there's been some discussion about like, oh, well, it's not Old Republic, it's just the Republic, right? Because the Old Republic is like the thousands of years ago thing. That's Acolyte era and all that. It's like, No, they're just saying it's the old republic in the show because it is a republic that existed before the empire, and then now we have the new republic because that's what they're calling themselves. So, like, obviously that's what they meant when they're talking about it in the show. It's not some sort of like, oh, don't they know what the old republic is?
Give me a break,
I,
man.
I know I have to address it because again, Star Wars fans don't know what they want. They've lost their way. I'm trying to help bring them back around again. So yeah, so that's not even a thing. But I do love that too. That they make it so realistic to believe, why this would be happening, why they'd find a ship that was that no one else knew about, how it could get off planet, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they just did a great job with that. Why the pirates would want to get to it. And so it's not it's half treasure hunt because Captain Silvo, Ja Na Nawood, Jude Law's character is looking for treasure, but the kids are just trying to get home. But that's such an interesting take on it that you get away from home and then nobody knows where it is and you don't know how to find it either. So how to find how to get home is such a cool way to present, the plight of the kids, right? So yeah, just everything around that planet was great. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's just one of the best written shows I've seen in a long, long time. It's just being a very perfectly told story, I think.
I missed a pretty key piece of the writing, I'm ashamed to say, in our last episode, DoA, which is even more embarrassing because we are gamers who lived through the Leet Speak era, which is that the droid is called SM-33, which is SME, and I totally didn't get that until I thought about it some more.
I mean, I honestly didn't think about it during that episode either, too. It hit me a little bit later as well. But because, I mean, we're just so used to thinking about droids in, droid terms in Star Wars, right? That, yeah, I missed it. I missed it the first time, too. And we even grew up with Hook. So we really have no excuse. But
I mean, and Peter Pan, obviously, so, so.
But there's lots of little neat nods to other pirate stuff, right? Like Captain Silvo, Long John Silver, right?
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of little things like that. I like it.
But SM-33's character was also just fantastic. Provided the comedy relief we're used to having from droids in Star Wars, but did it in an entirely different way. Yeah. And having him be the servant of whoever is the captain is very funny. I mean, him having his memory erased, so all he can say is "Can't say I remember." No, Atten is really funny. Yeah. His little rat in his eye is very. It's very funny. It's just great.
It's such a great take of the pirate on the shoulder, for
the parrot.
For
the parrot, yeah.
Parrot. Not a tiny pirate on the shoulder. That would have been great too, but parrot on the shoulder, yep.
Tell me, where is it that you call home?
Just back where we came from. It's Adanion, where we just were.
Can't say I remember no Atin.
That was a SME, SM-33 was voiced by Nick Frost, who is in all of the Simon Pegg movies, if you're familiar with those and all that. Does a great job of doing the classic, Long John Silver, Barbossa, the pirate voice, right? Does a good job of bringing that into the series in a realistic way. What else? Character-wise, like I said, I liked all four kids a lot. That Fern was the, kind of the bossy one, but, in a good way where she was sometimes the only one who was capable of stepping up and leading, even though she didn't always make the greatest decisions. KB was the brains, right? Neil was the comedy relief / the timid one that didn't really want to be along on the adventure, which, you need to have some sort of pushback in the group to do it. Otherwise, everyone just barrels forward. You need to have a little bit of internal resistance. And then, Wim is, again, the naive optimist who, also kind of pushes things along a little bit in his own way, but also needs some help. So they all bring something important, but they all need each other too. And I think that's demonstrated really well throughout the series that, at various times in different episodes, one will step up where the others need them, and I thought that was a great way of using an ensemble like that in a way that I haven't seen in a while. Cause it's so easy to just lose one or two where they're just kind of there, but every one of the four kids really had a chance to shine at some point in the series, which is great. Again, this should be basics, but I feel like it's rare to see,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that this is just following tropes that we've always known, and that we're
TV and film gotten so bad lately that we're just happy that they're meeting the bare minimum for
it's true
delivering on the writing. Oh,
it's true. Like,
isn't it?
This DoA, this isn't one of the greatest TV shows of all time. What it
No.
is a very successful clone of 80s and 90s children's adventure films that we have nostalgia for and are genuinely good, as well as classic literature like Treasure Island, right? Like Peter Pan. They've been doing this for hundreds of years at this point in time, and it took, we just, I guess, forgot how to do this for a while. So the weird thing is that while doing nothing innovative, it is refreshing because it's actually just going back to the blueprint that made things successful 30 and good 30 or 40 years ago, and makes us still talk about those things to this day.
And, I think with good writing too, it's not what you do, it's how you do it, right? You can tell a story that's been told before, but if you do it in your own way is a good way, you'll create, a new classic, right? Which I think this is. I think this is going to be like a new classic, kids adventure kind of thing. I think it's good enough that people will be watching it a decade, 2 decades from now. I hope so. I hope we have more of it, right? But it is really that where it's not, again, what you do, it's how you do it, right? So the takes like making the entire planet a mint, all that. It's all those twists to retelling a similar story, right? And I don't think this apes anything in particular beat by beat. That's another part of it too, is it draws from a bunch of different things and creates something new, right? It doesn't it's not like, to stay in the Star Wars universe, it's not like episode 7 more or less going beat for beat story-wise from episode 4, That was, kind of maybe not as great an example of that kind of thing, right? Where it's, how they did it was pretty much how it was done, in 1977 when that came out. Where this is, it took a lot of different elements from a lot of different things and crafted something unique, crafted its own story, So, and it's, maybe it's tougher to write stuff like this than I think it is. I wouldn't say I'm a fantastic writer or anything like that. I've never tried to write a script or anything, but maybe I should, just so I can prove I'm good at it. I don't know. People listen to us anyway if we say funny things. But yeah. Oh, also, I want to talk about the parents.
Oh, before we get to the parents,
go ahead. Go for it.
We have another sponsor, which of course is going to be Mando. Shout out to Mando. If you guys don't know, Mando creates delightful male grooming products, including stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, deodorant wipes, body wash, bar soap, whatever you need to be smelling great. And they have mandelic acid that is included, which was based off of a doctor owns the company. She created a women's brand called Lumi, which you may have heard about. But the mandelic acid basically makes it so the body odor never starts in the first place. And this is not an antiperspirant. It doesn't actually stop you. It doesn't have aluminum in it. It's not stopping you from sweating. What it does is it just prevents the creation of body odor, which is what I prefer because I enjoy sweat that keeps my body cool. And I don't
Otherwise
really
end up like a dog and you have to pant. You have to release heat through your mouth. No one wants that.
But, new year, you might be looking for a fresh start in terms of your grooming. And this is an opportunity for you guys to try the starter pack, which is just, you can order this, give it a shot, try a bunch of the scents that they have, try a bunch of the different products, figure out what you like. You might be surprised. Like I was surprised by how much I like the cream tube deodorant, which is basically lotion that you can rub into anywhere, your armpits, your feet, wherever you might have some odor. So that makes it's very pleasant to use. You can use a small amount and it keeps you fresh throughout the day. At least for me.
I'm surprised how well it worked. I had my doubts as well, but because I'd never really seen a deodorant like that. But hey, it really does work.
Yep. And the starter pack from Mando is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, i.e. the one that you already know, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash and deodorant wipes. Also, don't sleep on those deodorant wipes. Those are very helpful. If you can't get to the shower and you're starting to smell a little ripe, that will eliminate it immediately, I will tell you. Very useful.
Just hand them out at conventions for nerds like us. I'm just gonna say, big opportunity there, Mando.
Yep. So you get 2 free products and free shipping as a special for our listeners here at Nerd Legion. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack use code NERD, just NERD,
Mm.
at shopmando.com, shopmando.com. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. It does help us. So thank you very much to Mando. I use their stuff every day. Been really enjoying it. And you probably will too, but you can get out that starter pack and just try it before you commit. So thank you very much to Mando. Check it out. Code NERD.
I thought
All right,
you almost
so
said nude legion there, which I was like, that's a whole. I didn't know I was signing up for that. That's a whole different show.
So, Doa, what did you want to say about the parents and the acting?
I think one of the things that it's really tricky for kids adventure content to get right is the parents, right? Because you've got the innate conundrum that parents are more capable than children. They are bigger, stronger, older, smarter, wiser in most cases, And so the tricky part comes in where whenever the children are involved in a problem, the parents would be able to, by nature, solve it fairly quickly in a lot of cases. And so how do you get the parents out of the equation? One way is to get the kids far away from the parents, which is what they did. But when you bring the kids back with the parents, then you run into that problem, right? And this show dances around that so elegantly in that it has the parents be less capable than the kids, because by the time the kids and the parents are together, the kids have gone on this big adventure. They've become much more capable themselves. They understand the situation that they're in much better by virtue of their experiences. And the parents have all lived extremely sheltered lives.
Yep.
So they're less capable than the average adult would be. And so when I was looking at all that too, I was like, man, what a great way to handle that problem that kids movies always have. That, adults are just more capable generally than kids. You have to find a way to make the adults less capable if you really want the kids to be the heroes. And they did a good job with this, where the parents, once you saw, Wim's dad and Fern's mom towards the end, once they started to understand the situation and started to understand the extremes they would have to go to, what they would have to push themselves to do, then they started to be more capable and started being able to help out. But they needed an appropriate amount of time to catch up to the scenario, which I thought was really, another really well-written part of it, is they did a good job with the parents too.
Yep. And I think they had some good casting choices. Totally. Tunde Adebimpe, who I know is the singer of TV on the Radio, but who has done a bunch of acting work. Carrie Condon as Fern's mom, whom I know from her spectacular performance in the HBO series Rome. So there's a bunch of they found some good minor stars and character actors in order to bring into this to support Jude Law. But the casting I thought was really good overall.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I do agree that the twist they put on the parents being the naive ones by the end is very fun as well. It's like they took the opportunity to really think about what unique angles they could take as a result of the Star Wars universe and the choices that they had made in terms of the plot, and then had the characters fall in line. That's why I think this feels so real in many ways, is that there aren't really a lot of plot holes. Everything is pretty much explained. And the characters behave, I think, logically in their situation based off of their personalities and the actions that are available to them. So it feels really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see a kids show that doesn't just make the parents just dumb buffoons because, oh, kids are cool and parents just don't understand. A lot of shows just do that angle, and I think it takes away from it, because you don't. I think if you're making something for kids, you don't want to belittle parental figures, because in kids' lives, parents are important, and understanding that parents can do a lot to help you is important, I think, for a kid growing up. So whenever a show just passes off the parents as just, dumb, they don't get kids, they aren't, they can't help, I think that's bad, right? I don't think that's a good way to make a kids show. So I like that the parents, were naive at first, right? They didn't understand the situation, but they didn't understand it for a good reason, right? Because they had lived this entire life this one way, and they didn't have the experiences that the kids did. But it showed once they learned, they were ready to learn, jump in and catch up, right? So I think it was a great portrayal of good parents, right?
We made it. Dad, come on!
So that's and I think that's important again if you're making kids content is to not just toss the parents out as some like throwaway minor characters or make them bad unless they're supposed to be villains for some reason, of course. But yeah, they did a great job with that too. And I think it goes back to Christopher Ford and John Watts being the creators for this, and they were involved in the newer Marvel
the Tom Holland
Spider-Man
Spider-Man
films.
movies.
Yeah, which were good. And one of the things I always said about those movies in particular was that they did a really good job of being authentic to like the young person experience, right? Navigating various parts of young life, right? Whether it's junior high or high school and all that kind of stuff in a funny but realistic way. So when I saw that they were on board with this, that was the first thing that gave me hope. It was like, oh, these guys know how to make stuff with young young
through the
protagonists,
lens of viewed through the lens
Right.
of kids. Yeah.
and they really crushed it. Like they did such a fantastic job, with this, and yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot more to say about that beyond that, but I mean, I think those are the guys you want to make something like this now. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that they know what they're doing between the Spider-Man films and this now. I hope we get another season. I really, really do.
Yeah, and you can say also that in terms of the aesthetic. Now, I did like what they did with Ahsoka and the sets and the costumes, and it felt very Star Wars. Andor did
Great.
as well when they're actually building the sets. I think we took a step back where parts of the Acolyte looked a lot cheaper, but this feels like a very real universe, and the diversity of different sets that they had to build for this and the aesthetic decisions they had to make is pretty remarkable, because they go from the suburbia of Aten to a pirate port to a luxury hotel and spa, plus all of the starships. Like, it has a lot of really different locations in this show, and they all look fantastic.
Yeah, this is one of the best looking Star Wars shows in a long time for sure.
Like to the treasure cave, like the pirate treasure cave, to the actual mint itself. Like, there's a lot going on visually in this show, and it just looks fantastic.
The lighting was always very good. Just the entire last episode had so many great little visual things, right? The lights coming down from the pirate ship as it was kind of cruising low over the town and coming through the windows and backlighting certain scenes, and they're sneaking around and all that, to when like they go to find KB after the ship has crashed and all that. And the docking bay, the docking door opens to the ship, and all the credits like stream out, and then she rolls out on top of it too, which is such a great indicator that like here's this massive treasure in front of them, but all they care about is their friend, right? It's such a great like meaningful moment too, where it's like none of the riches in the world matter when it comes to the people that you care about, and just little visual things like that are things that really put this show above a lot of others. By the way, I just got to shout out Jaleel White as Gunter as well. People our age would have grown up with him as Steve Urkel in Family Matters,
It's
which
a very funny
was a show
casting.
my
It's
family
great.
was addicted to. It was TGI Fridays, right? We watched every single episode of Family Matters, and he was kind of the star of that show, and so seeing him back as this very like frantic pirate lackey was great, and it looks like he went down with the ship at the end, but I'm holding out hope that he somehow survived and we can get more Gunter in season 2. we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. You guys, what else to say? I think that this is a very easy to watch show. It's not a massive time commitment, but it is just fun. Like, I'm glad it wasn't longer than it was, DoA. This doesn't need to be hour-long episodes of prestige TV. It felt like the pacing was really great. I was excited to see every episode. My wife watched it with me. My wife also really enjoyed the show.
Same, yeah.
When my kid, who's 4 right now, is maybe a year or two older, I'll be excited to show him this show as well and watch it with him. So I think there's so much going on as if you have a family, or if you don't, you just enjoy these kind of adventurous romps that are just fun and not pretending to be more than it is. This is a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think if you haven't watched it, you really, really need to go see it. It is not just great Star Wars, but it's great television. But most importantly, in a Star Wars fan sense, it finally does, again, what we wanted all this new Star Wars stuff to do from the beginning. When we first heard we were getting all this new Star Wars stuff, we wanted to hear good new stories with new characters told in the universe that we loved, and that's what this show is, and it deserves all the accolades in the world for doing it right. So yeah, go watch the show, get your friends to watch the show. Like, I mean, it's sad that the viewership is so bad because it's way better than anything else that's come out for a while, Star Wars wise, since Andor. So yeah, let's support this thing because it's great. They deserve it. And you deserve, as a Star Wars fan, if you're out there, this is the content we want. We deserve this kind of content for supporting it for so long, So
it's not tedious like other shows or Star Wars shows and movies.
Not at all.
It's not preachy like other shows and TV shows and films and Star Wars have been. It's just fun. It's just fun. It's trying to make you enjoy the adventure and the ride, and that's it. That's it. It's like a good amusement park ride is what it is in TV show form.
Kids adventure thing should be,
So yeah. All right. So that'll do it for Skeleton Crew. Next week, we are going to be returning to our 1980s fantasy film marathon because we have a little bit of the break in the schedule. And that will be, coincidentally enough, Heavy Metal, the very famous animated film from 1981. That's the next film chronologically that is on our list. If you guys haven't seen some of our other ones, I would check out, we've done Clash of the Titans and Excalibur. There's a bunch of great movies from the early 80s that we've reviewed so far that you probably have heard of, as well as some very niche ones that you probably haven't, but those are funny and delightful in their own way. And then after that, as promised, we will do the first 3 episodes of season 2 of Severance. We can't do that one yet because not enough episodes have come out. But as you guys know, just like we do with Skeleton Crew, we like to look at the first few episodes and then we'll release a follow-up episode at the end of the season if it is in fact good. Given how good Severance season 1 was, I think we'll probably end up doing 2 episodes on Severance. And then also, after we've done that, we'll be hitting up the new Witcher anime movie. I believe it's called Curse of the Deep. The first one I haven't seen yet, but I will watch it. Before that was apparently quite good, the Netflix anime film. So that's kind of our map of future content here on Nerd Legion. Thank you very much, as usual, for watching and supporting our sponsors. We'll see you next week for Heavy Metal.